Hi Islander family, it's Lisa. For the past several weeks, I've gone back and forth about whether to make this video. But there are several matters that I believe the owners deserve to know about, so I'm going to share them with you here. After listening to the June 15th board meeting, I learned that information from my personal ChatGPT account had been accessed and discussed. Honestly, I was blown away by what I heard. When I left my position with the Islander, I uninstalled ChatGPT from the office computer, but apparently I didn't log completely out of my account. When the software was later reinstalled, my personal account automatically opened. At that point, the appropriate thing to do would have been very simple. Let me know that my account was still logged in, and then log out of it. Instead, someone decided to go through it. It was stated during the meeting that they did not initially realize it was my account. I have difficulty accepting that explanation because my name and photo are clearly visible when the account opens. Based on what was discussed during that meeting, this was not simply a situation in which somebody accidentally accessed the account, realized it was mine, and then closed it. It was acknowledged that material was reviewed and sorted through, including information beyond the period when I worked with the Islander. I also learned that some of the board members held a closed meeting to discuss information obtained from my personal account. When I requested access to the meeting recording, my request was denied. What troubles me is that no one contacted me to explain what had happened. No one apologized or gave me an opportunity to respond. The meeting minutes state that a majority of the board consider the matter closed. Closed for whom? If this had been your personal account, would you consider the way it was handled acceptable? I believe every owner should ask whether this was handled fairly and with the level of integrity we should expect from those entrusted to represent us. During the June 15th meeting, it was said that these actions were taken to protect the Islander. I find that statement deeply troubling because it suggests that the Islander somehow needed to be protected from me. I stepped away from my position shortly after the March 30th board meeting because the circumstances surrounding my work had become increasingly difficult. I believe part of my responsibility was to perform due diligence for the association. So when I looked into the engineering firm being considered, and I couldn't verify that they were licensed, I brought that concern to the board. Instead of it being welcomed and investigated, I was criticized for raising it. When I resigned, I chose not to air my concerns publicly, even though further investigation confirmed that my concern was valid. They weren't licensed. Instead, I respectfully stepped away because the Islander had already experienced enough conflict. But stepping away from my position didn't mean I stopped caring. In fact, I've continued working with Mitch behind the scenes, communicating with the contacts I've made and the agencies involved to help obtain information that could move us closer to a workable solution, even though my continued involvement may not have been welcomed by everyone. During the June 15th meeting, it was also suggested that I have an agenda. I absolutely do. My agenda has always been to find the path that gives the Islander the best opportunity to be repaired. That's never been a secret. That's what led me to investigate the historic eligibility path, work with the Florida Department Bureau of Historic Preservation, and share the resulting information with the owners. Every significant question raised about whether the Islander qualifies for this path has been answered. Dr. Lucas with the Florida Bureau of Historic Preservation confirmed that potentially eligible and preliminarily determined eligible mean the same thing. FEMA has also communicated directly with Dr. Lucas, and both agencies are in agreement regarding our eligibility. FEMA confirmed that Dr. Lucas's endorsement of the Islander's historical status constitutes the strongest endorsement that can be provided, and advised us to familiarize ourselves with the protections it can offer. The Islander is recorded in the Florida Master Site File, which is the state's official inventory of historically significant properties. I'll provide the supporting emails and documents so you can read them for yourself. The question is no longer whether the historic path is legitimate or available. The Islander has been preliminarily determined eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. That's a meaningful distinction and a genuine honor. More importantly, it may provide protections and flexibility that could make repairing the Islander more manageable. In May, I asked owners to participate in a survey, and the results showed strong support for pursuing the historic path. So if the historic path has been confirmed and has the support of the majority of participating owners, I believe it's reasonable to ask why the board continues trying to make the traditional 50% path work instead. We've been told that contractors believe the repairs can be completed below the 50% threshold. However, we still don't even have a set of engineering plans. Without complete plans and a defined scope of work, it's difficult to understand how anyone can provide a reliable cost estimate. What we do have is the history of this project so far. Multiple contractors have evaluated the property. The estimates reviewed in January were substantially higher than the amount available under the 50% rule. Even the lowest proposal was over $1.6 million. Several other proposals were closer to or above $2 million. So based on the updated appraisal, our 50% threshold is approximately $1.374 million. After including the portion of the Belfour expenses that have to be counted, the amount remaining for reconstruction may be closer to $1.17 million. That creates a significant gap between the amount available and the estimates previously received. Certainly, some costs may be excluded, and parts of the scope may be adjusted. But we're not talking about trimming a few $1,000s. We may need to eliminate or reallocate several hundred thousands of dollars from work that must be completed. A contractor's opinion doesn't determine whether the project complies with the 50% rule. The town's floodplain administrator determines which costs must be counted and whether the project complies with substantial improvement requirements. If the actual project cost later exceeds the threshold, work could be stopped, permits could be affected, and the buildings could be required to comply with much more extensive floodplain requirements, possibly including elevation. I don't believe that risk has been adequately explained to the owners. It has also been suggested that the association could begin under the traditional 50% path and then switch to the historic path if problems arise. I've personally discussed this with Randy Spears, and he has made it very clear that the two paths are not interchangeable. The association cannot begin under one permitting path and then later simply switch because that approach becomes unworkable. That makes this decision especially important because we might not get an opportunity to reverse it. The historic path may require some additional administrative steps, an application fee, a hearing, and possibly several additional weeks. Time and money matter, but those additional steps must be weighed against the protections and flexibility the historic path may provide. The Sandalwood property has repeatedly been used and is as an example of how difficult a variance can be. However, Sandalwood involved a setback request that affected a neighboring property and its views of the water. Randy Spears told me that the Islanders' hearing would be very different and primarily procedural because our circumstances are totally different. That doesn't mean our process will be effortless or that every question has been answered. It means the remaining questions should be investigated and answered, rather than used as reasons to abandon the opportunity. The Islander is in a unique position that very few damaged properties are afforded. Other properties along the beach may have been able to be repaired under different circumstances, but we don't know their appraised values, their repair costs, anything about their insurance proceeds, or permitting histories. Every property is different. The owners deserve more than speculations that the island can be repaired under the traditional 50% path. We deserve actual numbers, written estimates, a complete scope of work, and written confirmation from the appropriate town officials concerning which costs must be counted. And most importantly, what happens if the project exceeds the threshold? We also deserve a complete explanation of the historic path, including its costs, timeline, procedures, and the protections or exemptions it may provide. Only after receiving verified information about both paths can the board make a fully informed decision. I'm not asking anyone to agree with me simply because I say so. I'm asking you to examine the information for yourself, read the communication from the Florida Bureau of Historic Preservation and FEMA, review the survey results, listen carefully to the board meetings. Then ask yourself whether decisions are being made using complete and verified information, and whether the clearly expressed wishes of the majority of the owners are being taken seriously, or are they being disregarded. From everything we currently know, the historic path appears to offer meaningful protections with manageable additional steps. The traditional 50% path appears to carry substantially greater financial and regulatory risk, without documentation showing that it can actually be accomplished. That's why I believe we should complete the investigation of the historic process before gambling on a path that may be difficult or impossible to undo. The Islander doesn't belong to one board member, one group, or one agenda. It belongs to all of us. You have continued paying your fees. You've waited patiently and placed your trust in the people making these decisions. We deserve complete information and honest, verifiable answers. I'm including a link to a short, informal owner survey. It's not an official board survey. It's an owner-to-owner effort that gives everyone an opportunity to express their views. This is your property. These decisions affect your ownership, your money, and the future of the Islander for your family. Your opinion matters. Please complete the survey, review the supporting documents, and communicate your position directly to the board. Thanks for listening and for your continuing to care about the future of the Islander. Have a great day.